The noisy chatter of 300 children echoed off the tall cinderblock walls of Oak Ridge Elementary's cafeteria, but 7-year-old Leo Miller was not paying attention to the noise. He was kneeling on the cold floor near the dishwashing station, holding out a crumpled brown paper bag with a bright red apple resting on top. Crouched in front of him was an older man in faded blue denim overalls, his hands calloused and worn from a long morning of scrubbing floors and emptying heavy trash bins. Suspended from the man's belt loop was a heavy ring of brass keys, along with a sleek, metallic key fob bearing the iconic emblem of a high-end luxury vehicle, a subtle detail that every adult in the room had completely overlooked. Leo did not care about the keys or the man's worn uniform. He simply saw a man who looked tired, hungry, and forgotten by the crowd around him. With a soft, earnest voice, Leo pushed the paper bag forward and told the man that he looked like he needed lunch more than he did. The man stopped mid-scrub, his tired eyes widening as he looked into the face of a child who offered him everything he had without asking for a single thing in return. If you believe that true kindness requires no audience, that generosity is born in the quietest moments, and that the smallest acts of love can turn a stranger's world upside down, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment below, share this story with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel for more journeys that remind us what truly matters. My name is Sarah Miller. I am 32 years old, and for the past 3 years, my entire universe has revolved around keeping a roof over my son Leo's head and ensuring he grew up with a heart uncorrupted by the bitterness of the world. After my husband passed away following a long, exhausting illness, the heavy burden of survival fell entirely onto my shoulders. I took a job as an assistant in the administrative office at Oak Ridge Elementary, a prestigious private academy where wealthy families sent their children to prepare for elite futures. The pay was modest, barely enough to cover our modest 2-bedroom apartment at the edge of town, but the position allowed Leo to attend the school on a partial staff scholarship. Every morning, I woke at 5 to prepare Leo's lunch, carefully packing what little we had left in the pantry. Money was always tight. The winter months had brought rising heating bills, and there were nights when I quietly skipped dinner so Leo would have enough for his school meals. Yet, despite our hardships, Leo never complained. He possessed a rare, observant empathy that made him seem far older than 7. While other children bragged about expensive toys and family vacations, Leo noticed the people whom society chose to ignore. The bus drivers waiting in the cold, the crossing guards standing in the rain, and the quiet staff who kept the school running behind closed doors. That crisp October morning began like any other, but the atmosphere at Oak Ridge Elementary was unusually charged with tension. The school's arrogant headmaster, Principal Richard Sterling, had spent the entire week frantically preparing for an unannounced inspection by the elusive chairman of the Vance Educational Foundation. The wealthy benefactor who owned the school, funded its multi-million-dollar programs, and held total authority over its board of directors. Sterling was a man obsessed with appearances and status. He treated the staff like replaceable cogs, walked past custodians without offering a greeting, and reserved his smiles strictly for the school's most influential donors. Sterling had ordered a complete overhaul of the campus facilities, demanding that every hallway shine and every room look immaculate. To handle the extra workload, the maintenance supervisor had brought in a temporary janitor earlier that week. His name was Arthur. He was 54 years old, quiet, and carried himself with a quiet, patient dignity that stood in sharp contrast to the chaotic energy of the school. Arthur wore simple denim work overalls, kept his eyes lowered while pushing his mop cart, and spent his days scrubbing the greasy floors of the cafeteria and wiping down the heavy wooden tables after each lunch period. To Principal Sterling and the rest of the faculty, Arthur was invisible, just another low-wage worker hired to sweep up dirt. But to Leo, Arthur was a human being who looked like he had carried the weight of the world on his shoulders for far too long. During the third period lunch recess, the cafeteria was a sea of chaotic energy. Children shouted across tables, trading packaged snacks and laughing, while faculty members stood near the doors chatting among themselves. In the corner of the room, near the swinging doors of the kitchen, Arthur was down on one knee, replacing a broken wheel on his mop bucket. His forehead was lined with sweat, and his hands were stained with grease. He had been working since 4 a.m. without taking a single break. Leo had been sitting at a middle table, unmoving, watching Arthur from across the room. While the other kids ate their sandwiches, Leo noticed that Arthur had looked at the clock 3 times, wiping his brow with a frayed towel, but never once reached for a drink or food. Leo picked up his brown paper lunch bag, which contained a homemade turkey sandwich, a small box of raisins, and a crisp red apple, and quietly slid off his bench. He walked past his giggling classmates, weaving through the crowded tables until he reached the quiet corner where Arthur was kneeling. Without hesitation, Leo dropped down onto his knees on the hard linoleum floor, coming eye-to-eye with the working man. Arthur paused, his wrench slipping slightly as he looked up in surprise. Standing right in front of him was a small boy with untidy brown hair, extending a paper bag with both hands. On top of the bag sat a bright, polished red apple. Leo looked directly into Arthur's tired eyes and said softly, "You've been working all day without stopping. My mom says that when people work hard, they need fuel. I want you to have my lunch." Arthur stared at the boy, completely taken aback. In all his years, he had rarely experienced an act of pure, unprompted generosity from a complete stranger, let alone a child at an elite private school. Arthur glanced down at the bag, then back at Leo's earnest face. "Young man," Arthur said, his voice deep and raspy, "this is your lunch. You need to eat so you can pay attention in class." "I ate a big breakfast," Leo lied gently, offering a warm smile. "Besides, my mom packed an extra apple. Please take it. You look like you need a friend today." Arthur's chest tightened. A flicker of deep emotion washed across his weathered face. Slowly, carefully, he reached out his calloused hand and took the paper bag. As he moved his leg to adjust his position, the heavy ring of keys attached to his belt loop swung forward. Hanging alongside the standard brass door keys was a sleek, black key fob decorated with a polished chrome crest. The unmistakable electronic key to a high-performance luxury sedan worth well over $100,000. Leo didn't recognize the car brand. He only saw that the key looked fancy. Arthur caught the child's gaze flicking toward the fob, but before either of them could say another word, a sharp, furious voice shattered the quiet moment. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" Principal Richard Sterling came marching across the cafeteria floor, his polished leather shoes clicking loudly against the tile. His face was flushed with anger, and his tailored suit looked immaculate compared to Arthur's grease-stained overalls. Behind Sterling were 2 faculty members who looked equally alarmed. Sterling grabbed Leo by the shoulder, pulling him back from Arthur with an aggressive yank. "Leo Miller, get away from that man this instant," Sterling snapped, his voice echoing across the now-silent cafeteria. Hundreds of children stopped talking, turning their heads to watch the drama unfold. Arthur stood up slowly, rising to his full height. Though dressed in work clothes, there was a sudden, formidable stillness in his posture that made Sterling pause for a split second. "Is there a problem, Principal Sterling?" Arthur asked calmly, his voice steady and controlled. "The problem," Sterling spat, glaring down at Arthur with pure contempt, "is that you are a temporary custodian hired to clean floors, not to solicit food from our students. How dare you take a child's lunch? This is highly inappropriate behavior, and it reflects horribly on the standards of Oak Ridge Elementary." "He didn't take it," Leo cried out, trying to step forward, but Sterling held him back firmly. "I gave it to him. He was hungry." "Quiet, Leo," Sterling snapped, ignoring the boy's plea. Sterling turned back to Arthur, his finger pointing aggressively at the man's chest. "We do not tolerate panhandling or unprofessional conduct from lower-level staff. You are supposed to be invisible, doing your job without disturbing the paying families of this institution. Pack your tools. You are fired effective immediately." I had been entering the cafeteria from the administrative hallway to check on the afternoon attendance sheets when I heard Sterling's harsh voice echoing across the room. My heart dropped into my stomach when I saw him holding my son by the shoulder while publicly humiliating the quiet maintenance worker. I rushed through the crowd of silent students, stepping directly between Sterling and Arthur. "Principal Sterling, please stop," I demanded, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. "What is going on here?" Sterling sneered, looking down at me as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience. "Sarah, your son was found handing his meals to the maintenance staff. This man was accepting food from a minor on school grounds. It is a clear breach of protocol. I am terminating his contract, and I suggest you teach your son proper boundaries if you wish to maintain your employment here." The threat was clear, cold, and calculated. Sterling was reminding me that my job and Leo's scholarship were entirely at his mercy. I looked at Arthur. He did not look angry or humiliated. Instead, his eyes held a profound, quiet sadness as he looked at Sterling, then down at the paper bag held firmly in his hand. "Mrs. Miller," Arthur said softly, addressing me with total respect, "your son is a remarkable young man. You should be immensely proud of the heart you have raised him to have." Before I could reply, Sterling scoffed loudly. "Save the speech for the street. Leave the premises now before I have security escort you off the property." Arthur nodded slowly. He did not argue. He reached into his pocket, placed the wrench neatly inside his tool cart, and picked up his paper bag. He looked at Leo one last time, offering the boy a gentle, grateful nod, and then walked quietly toward the rear service exit. The rest of the afternoon was a nightmare. Sterling called me into his office an hour later, delivering a cold reprimand. He informed me that my position was under review and that if any further disruptions occurred, my contract would be terminated immediately, ending Leo's scholarship with it. I sat in his plush office, clutching my hands tightly in my lap, swallowing my pride because I couldn't afford to lose our only source of income. When the final bell rang, I met Leo at his classroom door. He looked up at me with tears brimming in his big brown eyes. "Mom, I was just trying to be kind," he whispered as we walked to our beat-up sedan in the parking lot. "Why did Mr. Sterling get so mad?" I knelt in the chilling afternoon air, pulling my son into a tight embrace. "You did nothing wrong, Leo," I promised him, fighting back my own tears. "Never let anyone make you feel bad for having a kind heart. The world needs more people like you, even if some people are too blind to see it." The following morning, a dark cloud of anxiety hung over the school. Principal Sterling had called a mandatory emergency assembly in the main auditorium for 9 o'clock sharp. All faculty, administrative staff, maintenance workers, and students were ordered to attend. Rumors were circulating through the hallways that the Board of Trustees and the mysterious chairman of the Vance Educational Foundation had arrived unannounced and were demanding an immediate meeting with the entire institution. By 8:55, the auditorium was completely packed. Over 500 students sat in neat rows while teachers stood along the aisles. On the main stage, a long wooden table had been set up, behind which sat 3 prominent members of the school's board of directors, dressed in expensive charcoal suits. In the center of the stage stood Principal Sterling, adjusting his tie nervously, clutching a speech he had prepared to showcase the school's achievements. I stood near the back doors with the rest of the administrative staff, holding Leo's hand tightly. My heart pounded in my chest. I knew that if Sterling decided to make an example of us, today could be our last day at Oak Ridge. At precisely 9 o'clock, the side entrance of the stage opened. A tall, distinguished gentleman in a tailored navy blue suit walked out. The room fell into an expectant silence. Sterling immediately stepped forward, extending his hand with an exaggerated, sycophantic smile. "Welcome, Chairman Vance," Sterling proclaimed into the microphone, his voice dripping with forced warmth. "It is an absolute honor to have you at Oak Ridge Elementary today. We have prepared a full presentation to demonstrate our commitment to excellence, discipline, and high standards." The man in the navy suit did not shake Sterling's hand. Instead, he took the microphone from the stand and looked out at the crowded auditorium. "Thank you, Principal Sterling," the man said, his voice deep, commanding, and instantly recognizable. "However, I am not Chairman Arthur Vance." The entire room gasped. Sterling froze, his smile instantly faltering. I beg your pardon," Sterling stammered. "If you are not Mr. Vance, then who?" My name is Thomas Vance, the gentleman explained, stepping to the side of the podium. I am the vice president of the Vance Foundation. My father, Arthur Vance, the founder and owner of this institution, prefers to evaluate his properties without the performative welcome committees, polished speeches, and curated tour. Thomas Vance turned his eyes toward the back of the auditorium. My father believes that the true character of an institution is revealed only when nobody knows you are looking. For the past 3 days, he has been working inside this school, walking these hallways, scrubbing your cafeteria floors, and observing how the leadership of Oak Ridge treats the people who keep it running. A deafening silence fell over the auditorium. Sterling's face drained of all color. His hands began to tremble visibly as he gripped the edge of the wooden podium. Working, scrubbing floors, Sterling whispered, his voice cracking with pure terror. From the back doors of the auditorium, the heavy wooden doors swung open. Walking down the center aisle, dressed in a sharp, pristine charcoal suit, was Arthur. His gray hair was neatly combed, his posture regal and imposing. Suspended from his belt loop was the exact same heavy brass keyring, accompanied by the sleek luxury key fob that Leo had noticed the day before. The students looked on in awe, while the teachers traded shocked whispers. Arthur walked with a slow, deliberate stride toward the stage. Every person he passed leaned back, stunned by the transformation of the man they had walked past without a second glance just hours earlier. As Arthur reached the stairs, Thomas Vance stepped back, offering his father a respectful nod. Arthur took the microphone from his son, stepping directly up to Principal Sterling, who looked as though he might collapse onto the floor. Principal Sterling, Arthur spoke, his voice echoing with absolute authority through the loudspeakers. Yesterday afternoon, you told me that custodians are supposed to be invisible. You said that lower-level staff do not reflect the standards of this school, and you fired me for accepting a paper bag from a 7-year-old child. Sterling couldn't form words. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he swallowed hard. Mr. Vance, sir, I had no idea, if I had known it was you. That is precisely the point, Arthur interrupted, his voice dropping into a stern, unyielding tone. If you only treat people with respect when you know they hold power, then you possess no real integrity at all. You have built a culture of arrogance, coldness, and fear within these walls. You teach these children that status matters more than character, and that appearances are more valuable than human kindness. Arthur turned away from Sterling, taking a step toward the edge of the stage. His eyes scanned the vast audience until they locked onto the back row, where I was standing with my hands over my mouth, holding Leo beside me. Yesterday, Arthur continued, his expression softening dramatically, while hundreds of people walked past me, choosing to ignore a tired old man scrubbing floors, one person stopped. A 7-year-old boy saw someone in need and offered his entire lunch without hesitation or expectation of reward. Arthur pointed toward the back row. Leo Miller, Arthur called out, his voice filling the room with warmth. Would you and your mother please come down to the stage? Gasping whispers rippled through the crowd as the faculty made way for us. I took Leo's hand, my heart hammering against my ribs, and walked down the long center aisle under the gaze of the entire school. When we reached the front of the stage, Arthur stepped down from the platform, dropping onto one knee directly in front of Leo, bringing himself down to the child's eye level, just as he had done in the cafeteria. Arthur reached into his suit jacket pocket and pulled out a small, carefully preserved brown paper bag, topped with a fresh, bright red apple. Leo, Arthur said, his eyes glistening with genuine emotion. You gave me hope when I needed it most. You reminded me why I built these schools in the first place, not to create status or wealth, but to nurture human beings who make the world a better, kinder place. Arthur looked up at me, offering a respectful nod. Mrs. Miller, your son possesses a rare, unbreakable spirit. Effective immediately, the Vance Foundation is establishing a full, permanent endowment in Leo's name. His education at Oak Ridge, and any university he chooses to attend in the future, will be fully covered. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I clutched Leo's shoulder, completely overcome with gratitude. Arthur then turned his gaze back to Sterling, his voice hardening once more. As for you, Mr. Sterling, your tenure at Oak Ridge Elementary ends today. You are relieved of your duties immediately. The board will select a new principal who understands that true leadership begins with humility and service. Sterling hung his head in absolute disgrace, quietly exiting the stage through the side door while the auditorium erupted into thunderous applause. Teachers, staff, and students stood up, cheering for Leo, whose simple act of compassion had exposed the truth and transformed our entire future. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere at Oak Ridge Elementary changed entirely. Under new leadership, the school implemented a community service program named in Leo's honor, encouraging students to recognize, respect, and assist the quiet workers who kept their town running every single day. Arthur visited the campus often, not as an owner in an expensive suit, but as a dear friend who regularly dropped by the cafeteria to sit with Leo during lunch, sharing stories and trading apples. That day taught everyone a lesson that no textbook could ever capture. Wealth can purchase buildings, hire staff, and build impressive reputations, but it can never buy a genuinely kind heart. True greatness is not found in the titles we carry or the clothes we wear, but in the quiet, compassionate choices we make when we think no one else is watching. Before this story comes to an end, we would love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment where a simple act of kindness completely changed someone's perspective? Leave a meaningful comment below, because your story might be the exact light someone needs to read today. If this journey touched your heart, please like this video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional story. Remember, never look down on anyone unless you are reaching out to help them up, because sometimes the smallest act of love becomes the greatest miracle in someone else's life.